Hello everybody and welcome to SA Sociology Hub. My name is Thandika Sivanyoni and in today's video we will be talking about the famous Karl Marx who became a theorist after the structural theorists. So your Emil Durkheim, Auguste Comte, right? And so after structural functionalism, the sociological theory moved in several directions, mainly as critiques of the structural theory's limitations. And so in today's video, I will be talking about the conflict theory. Let's get right into it. As I've mentioned, Marx was making his theories during industrialization, and he was arguing that economic structures shape all aspects of society. And so his theory was on historical materialism, which explained how societies have evolved based on conflicts between economic classes. But then he starts and puts it in a beautiful way that there is, so with historical materialism, he speaks about how society has progressed over time. For example, from feudalism to capitalism, socialism, and communism. And so at the time that he was arguing this, it was during the beginning of or during industrialization, where capitalism was at its peak, right? And so in his argument that society progressed over time, he also speaks about the base and the superstructure. And so in the base, he argues that it is the economic system, for example, feudalism or capitalism. And in this, at the time that he is arguing where the base is what? Capitalism. And so he also argues that on top of this, so imagine a pyramid, right? And at the base of the pyramid, it's the base, which is the system or the economic system. And in this instance, it's capitalism. Then on top of the base, it's the superstructure, whereby institutions like law, politics, culture, and education justify the base. And then at the top or at the peak of this triangle, we have the ruling class, which controls the superstructure. So the ruling class controls what? The institutions like politics, law, and education to maintain their power. Right. So, for example, if you live in a capitalistic society, your superstructure would be to make sure that you get education not for learning or not for knowledge, but so that you can what? Work and be an employee, which then speaks to what? Who controls the means of production, and which creates this class struggle that Marx speaks about here at the top, that there is a class struggle, and so it is divided into the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. So the bourgeoisie are it's the capitalist class which is the owners of means of production. Because they are what? They control the super base, the superstructure, they will then control the means of production. And then we also have the proletariat, which is the working class. And so as I've mentioned in the example that I've given, these ones, the working class, if you grow up in a capitalistic society, you work, you go to school so that you can get employment. It's not for knowledge, right? Marx looked at society in a very realistic and beautiful way. And in his argument that there's a class struggle, he speaks about who the owners of the means of production are, which is the bourgeoisie, right? He also he speaks about the proletariat or the working class. And he says that the working class is alienated and the workers become alienated from, firstly, the product that they produce. For example, if you work at a bakery, you will not, by any means, eat of the bread that you've made because you are hungry, or drink whatever drink that you're producing or juice that you're producing. Why? Because you are a worker there, and so you are alienated from the product that you've made. The second form of alienation that Marx argues that the proletariat experiences is the process of labor. So you do not have any control over the work you do. Or he was arguing that the proletariat does not have any control over the work that they do. Thirdly, he argues that their fellow workers are what? In a competition. And so the fellow workers themselves are alienated from each other. There's no cooperation. Instead, there's what? Competition over cooperation. And then lastly, their human potential becomes dehumanized. And these are still relevant today because why? We still live in a capitalistic society. And so what was Marx's hope? He was hoping that there would be a revolution which would bring about a change in society. There would be socialism and then communism, where the capitalistic society or the capitalists are done away with. Marx also argued against religion, and in his argument, he was saying that religion is a tool that the capitalist or the bourgeoisie are using to control over the working class. Marx saw religion as an ideological tool, right? He argued that it justifies suffering and teaches people to accept oppression rather than to challenge it. And then he argued that it promotes false consciousness, meaning people fail to see their real social and economic oppression. For example, in Christianity, people are taught that suffering in this life will be rewarded in heaven, discouraging the workers from demanding better conditions now, right? And in his famous statement was that religion is an opium of the poor. Marx's hope was that religion would disappear in a communist society, and where people wouldn't need religion or religious illusions because they would no longer suffer exploitation. And so this theory is criticized, especially with regards to religion, because not all religions support the ruling class, right? So the liberation theology or the religious activism against oppression. For example, in South Africa during the apartheid system, churches were used as spaces to convene and plan and strategize how they would do their protests. And so Marx's theory is still very much relevant, especially in South Africa, in that you can see its play through the apartheid system and, the fight for democracy, where the working class fought. The struggle was not just with race. It was also through it was embedded even in the working class. And we could also argue that the apartheid system was being perpetuated because there was this class struggle, between those who stole the means of and wanted to own the means of production, as well as those who were fighting for their rights, the human rights, as well as their class rights. South Africa has come a long way and it's still going far. And so, yeah, I'll leave it there today. I'll just leave it there. So what are your thoughts? Can you still see Marx's theory as relevant today? Do you see us moving towards a communist society? Please comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We will see you again in the next video. Bye.